listening to Pop This, the podcast where three women talk about pop culture. Here are your hosts, Lisa Christiansen, Andrea Gin, and Andrea Warner.
Okay, so, just to be, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a phrase when you use it, just full disclosure. Full disclosure.
Honestly, there were so many words popping into my brain. And I was
I had no
I don't
idea.
want to skew it, so I don't know which way.
I'd only spoken 5 words, and all of a
sudden,
sudden I was expecting you to know what I was thinking. That just goes to show how close we are. I assumed you knew. We would have got there. But full disclosure, we are recording on a Sunday night as opposed to our usual Wednesday. And I just want to announce that I've done nothing this whole day, and I don't feel guilty about it at all. Honestly,
nothing. I'm thrilled for you. I'm just 2% envious, but 98% so happy for you. That's the breakdown.
Why is that such a thing? You have to give yourself permission.
Capitalism.
To just enjoy your day off and not be productive in any way. And
capitalism. That's
it's
just capitalism. And the way that capitalism has infiltrated our downtime.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people if you think about it, even we don't make money off this podcast, but we make it every week, and all of our the stuff that we watch ostensibly for pleasure becomes part of the work of this. So it's we're still participating in a productivity structure that is very similar to capitalism. Anyway,
it's true.
God, guys, capitalism.
I know,
so
right?
stupid.
It always comes back to that. But part of me felt very, very guilty. I just laying on the couch. I had the dogs around me. I was reading a book. Sometimes I'd glance at Instagram, maybe nap. Then I would go get something to eat. And then I would rotate that system throughout the day. Different, staggered. And
good for you.
This sweatshirt has been on me for the entire day.
I love it.
Lisa is wearing a sweatshirt with the word Malibu in all caps across it for our listeners.
And
it looks very comfortable.
It looks really comfortable.
Yeah. And that's
it. Looks great, though.
That's the whole day.
I mean,
I put on a lip for you.
I love it, though. That's nice. I put on eyebrows for you because I just showered. I'm going into the office tomorrow, so I was like, you know what? I am. I'm supposed to go in once a month, so I'm going in tomorrow.
You showered in preparation.
I showered in preparation because it's
wow.
It's a day where I got to see people. Not a lot though, because Mondays aren't very busy days in the office. But just want to do my part to contribute to society, and I did a little bit of I did a lot of work today as well, but I also made time to watch a bit of the baseball game with my grandma and took a nap while watching the baseball game.
That puts me right to sleep. That and golf. If you're having any trouble. Ooh.
Okay, I'm going to make a confession right here that's going to shock the both of you. But through the number of years I have spent watching baseball, specifically the Toronto Blue Jays with my grandma, she has been a huge fan since, I don't know, the early 90s, before their playoff run or whatever. Or they won the playoffs. I can't remember. They did something. It had a pennant, maybe. Anyway,
you're asking the wrong people.
I think they
World Series.
They won the World Series. Is that what you were trying to say?
Yeah, okay. They did that. Yep. Anyway, so I have watched baseball with my grandma casually for me, her thoroughly. And anyway, so I've watched a lot of baseball with her this week. She was sick earlier in the week. She's better now. But I've watched a lot of baseball this week. And over the last 2 years, I have developed a fondness for 3 specific players. And I am now very devoted to those 3 specific
That's
players.
How they get
I don't want to know.
This happens all the time.
Jeez.
Well, that's the thing. I don't want to know about their personal lives. I just like that they are nice, thick boys who play baseball. That's my.
Are you going to get a jersey with their name on it?
Oh God, no! Okay. I can't ever wear a jersey. No, I don't. Honestly,
This is all super shocking to me.
Yeah.
I would not have guessed you could even name a player on the Blue Jays.
No, there's Alejandro Kirk, Vladdy Gutierrez, and my other one is Jason Momoa. I like all three of them quite a lot. Again, my thick boys. Alejandro Kirk they're all pretty young. I don't know. They're, like, I probably could have given birth to like all three of them, but whatever. So it's not necessarily like a lustful crush. It's like just these are my boys and these are who I cheer for. But Alejandro Kirk, in terms of like being a thick boy, he's on the rounder side of thick boy, and he's the backup catcher, but he's also a dynamite hitter. And watching him run the bases fills me with so much joy. I love to watch a thick boy run. I love to watch anyone run when they're thick. I don't care about watching thin people run. Because like that's kind of what I've been told they're groomed to do. So like I don't care about that. But I love watching thick folks run. Anyway, it makes me so happy to watch him run. But oftentimes they won't let him run if they're ready to like pull him from the game. So then they throw in like a substitute runner, or there's a term for it, but I can't remember what it is. So they'll let him hit because he does like very well. His like walks to like home runs ratio is kind of off the wall because he's so good at spotting the ball and like knowing what the ball's going to do. And he doesn't like strike out that much. Anyway,
if anyone's just tuning in,
are we getting to some kind of point here? Because this is all like
podcast.
I kind of just like glazed over when you started talking about baseball, and I don't know what's going on right now.
Are you going to give us his RBIs and stuff?
Yeah.
I don't know his RBIs. I'm just saying I know that his like he gets walked a lot because he's good at watching the ball, and that impresses me too. Anyways, baseball, my guilty pleasure.
Were we going anywhere with your stories?
No.
That's what you did today. You watched baseball.
I watched baseball today and napped.
Today.
And because I don't care enough about the baseball, I can nap during it and still derive pleasure from it.
I bet that was a beautiful nap. Just that sound of the baseball in the background. You just drifted off.
It was.
Oh,
wow.
That's a beautiful nap.
You two both had really nice days. I pulled 6,000 dandelions out of our garden today.
Oh my God.
That's what you were doing.
Yeah. Nightmare.
That sounds awful.
But it's just that time of the season where Vancouver there's just dandelions are opening their buds everywhere.
Yeah.
They were exploding. And it just really happened. This one weekend, it went up to almost 30, didn't it, the other day? Yesterday?
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
It was so hot.
And the nature of dandelions is that you, like we did it yesterday too. We did pulled some dandelions, but then you go to sleep and you wake up the next morning and there's like a whole new crop of dandelions that just opened overnight. And
you weed them. You don't just mow them because you want to get rid of them.
No.
Right?
Yeah. We've got like a tool that sort of like pulls them up. But
can you ever really get rid of them?
No, actually you can't.
Yeah.
But like if you leave them, they will just gridlock your entire garden because they're just like, they just spread and spread and spread and spread. And then everything is just all dandelions.
Especially when people like me come by and pick them up and blow them
that really sucks.
That's really nice, isn't it? I notice I've never been invited to your house in the spring.
Oh man. Yeah. I was talking about dandelions the other day and just wondering like if you have to try and sort of pull them up from like a root or if you can just mow them.
No, you have to pull them up by the root if you are trying to attempt to like get rid of them.
Now, do you make something with them? Because you're very crafty. Do you make a beverage or a tea or something? No?
No.
Okay.
Dandelion coffee.
Isn't it? People have dandelion wine. Isn't that a thing?
I'm sure.
Yeah, honestly, I think I've been at a coffee shop that's tried to serve me dandelion tea or something.
Like nettle tea. People are really into nettle tea. I never had that.
Yeah. I mean, I just like, why?
More of my outdoorsiness here. Just
I think so.
Shining through, hey? Nettle tea. And the fiddleheads are out too.
Ugh.
Those I've heard go in salads.
Yeah.
Is this true?
This is true. You've never had them, fiddleheads?
I'm sure I have.
I hate fiddleheads. Ugh.
Oh, you hate it? Oh.
Like name them if I had to like look at something. I'm not like great with
ferns,
stuff like that.
Right? It's just ferns before they get big.
It's like eating ferns. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that doesn't sound great.
It
No.
isn't.
There's
There's a reason that they're not
But
popular for eating.
like, okay, so I have a question though. Like, what about like, and this is gonna seem just like a wild thing to say. What about like pussy willows? Do like people eat those or put them in their food?
Why would
or do
you
stuff
select that out of all the plants
All
to
of
ask
the
about?
things, yeah. Like, why that?
Because I was thinking about like what always looks like the furry nature of them. So like,
Like,
how could you?
why
Do you
like,
look at that and
things that
think
are-
I could eat those?
There's
No,
not a single
I just-
furry thing that I want to eat. Not a single furry
I
thing.
agree with you.
Yes.
What I'm saying, it's just that everything, like everyone always seems to have a use for like all different kinds of like plants and herbs, et cetera, et cetera. And I just never heard about anybody doing anything with pussy willows. So I thought about like, I wonder if that's like a thing.
I don't believe so.
I've never heard of anyone
No,
doing
me
like
either.
they're just decorative.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. All right.
Well, unless you
who
figure
knew?
something out, you let us know.
I mean,
it might be
guess, like,
poisonous. You
Yeah,
never
no
know.
kidding.
Like you have to.
that's true.
Probably have to do
I'm never
some
gonna.
research.
I'm certainly not gonna try. Like I don't cook at all. You know that. And like, no.
If all of a sudden you were like discovering new herbs and herbal remedies, that would shock me even more than this whole baseball situation has.
Yeah, fair enough. Completely fair. That's very reasonable. Look, there's just some stuff that's gonna probably never come out about me until some point in the future when I'm nearing 60 and I release a 2-part docuseries
And it's like
on Hulu.
all your
And make
baseball
sure
friends
everybody
get
knows.
interviewed.
Yeah. And make sure everyone knows there's 2 parts.
2 parts. There's 2 parts. There's not 1 part, there's 2 parts. I'm Andrea Warner.
I'm Lisa Christiansen.
I'm Andrea Gin.
And you're listening to Pop This, and not
It's the baseball
talk.
edition.
Not,
Yeah.
not
Edible
Did you say
herbs and baseball. It's a new niche podcast.
the baseball issue.
The baseball edition.
Oh well, you know what? We never ended up doing A League of Her Own, the series.
Oh, yeah.
And it's coming back for a season,
But
a second
just-
season.
Can you
But it's only
imagine?
4 episodes.
Can you imagine like the future Andrea Warner biodoc? Like a third of it is just talking about baseball and her love of baseball.
And there she is in the dugout at one of the games.
Like I gotta say, I think it would probably only take up about 30 seconds, and only while it's sort of the part of the documentary that's exploring my love of thick boys. That's all. That's like
that can go off into any direction. Really.
Yeah.
obviously it can span like 10 minutes focused on Carlos, but then I can like open my eyes to a few other thick boys, and it's fine.
Okay. Again, people are tuning in. If you didn't start from the beginning of this episode, you are in danger of wondering what the heck is going on.
Honestly, I think my documentary series will be at least 14% more lighthearted than this. And we'll certainly explore beauty in a different way. So we're going to talk about Pretty Baby, Brooke Shields, which is here you find out here first, a 2-part docuseries.
Because another full disclosure, Lisa, why don't you give us part 2 of your full disclosures today?
Yes, well, my full disclosure is I'd watched what I thought was Pretty Baby, the Brooke Shields documentary. Turns out I'd watched part 1. So then I was reading the outline today, and then it said part 2. I did not know there was a part 2. I went and looked it up, and it makes so much more sense that the first one, that the documentary ended so abruptly, because there was more. And that
I
makes
just
a lot of sense now.
I just envision how Lisa just like hits stop so quickly as soon as anything is over an hour and it ends.
Right? That's all I've got for you today.
You just hit over, out,
Yep.
stop, gone.
Done.
You're not one of those people that just lets it play and then finds out there's a part 2.
No, I did not.
I mean, in all honesty, obviously most documentaries are not in
2
parts,
parts.
especially only 2 parts. Like maybe a 4-part docuseries, but like a two-part docuseries is more unusual as a setup. And I will say, I think that this one, instead of being 2 hours and 15 minutes in two parts, I think could easily have been an hour 40 in one part.
I would agree with you there. Yeah.
Well, because, like the first part kind of is getting at the story of Pretty Baby. And the second part is like, obviously a lot of things have happened in her life as an adult, but it's kind of not as salient as like talking about this story of her as a child actor.
It's more like part two is catching up with her. Like, what's Brooke doing now? Yeah.
And then, but there are like, kind of like a 5-minute span here and there in part two that is interesting and would have been worth keeping if they had made it into just like one documentary.
Yeah, I think that they repeat some things from part one in part two because they've made it into two parts, you know what I mean? Like, and if they just trusted, I don't know I'm trying to figure out what the business decision is to put two parts. Like, what's the creative decision? I mean, creative decision so rarely makes the decision. So I have to assume it's a business decision. And I'm so interested, like,
well, I had completely forgotten about Suddenly Susan. And,
and
like,
it was good
seriously,
to get that in.
Exactly. Now I remember that she was in a long running TV series.
Well, I feel like, I mean, like I appreciate that part two covers a lot of material. And I do think that there are like some really fascinating parts about part two. And I maybe it's just that there's so much really squicky stuff in part one. Mm-hmm. Not that part two doesn't have squicky stuff. And for anybody listening to this, like this is an episode that's going to touch on, sexual exploitation of children and sexual assault of an adult, Brooke Shields. Like it's not easy subject matter, but like I'm just like so curious. Like after having watched the Pam Anderson one so recently, and that goes through things I think pretty seamlessly and in what, an hour 40 or something? Like I can't remember exactly how long the Pam Anderson one was, but like it's, this just doesn't seem quite like it needs to be as long as it is. And it could be just tightened up a little bit. And I think it would serve Brooke Shields even better.
I'm just going to say I didn't need that much Andrea Agassi.
Yes.
So that's interesting to me because I don't need a lot of Andrea Agassi, but I was really interested in hearing how, you know what? Maybe we should save this for later on. Let's come back to Andrea Agassi.
Oh my God, is it because you wanted to see more sports? Is that what happened?
I know. No, I was going to say, is like your favorite tennis player?
Are you defending the tennis player now?
Can you tell us about tennis?
Yeah.
He really upsets me actually on a lot of levels, but we'll come back to it. I swear we'll come back to it. We should do before we get it's just we've done it so often recently where we're like the background and synopsis come like 3/4 of the way through the show and I'm like, well, let's tighten it up, ladies.
Yeah.
And because I wrote this background and it's not necessarily the most clear thing, I will read it because I think I should do that to myself. All right. Pretty Baby, Brooke Shields is a 2-part docuseries on Hulu and Disney Plus from ABC News about model, actor, and author Brooke Shields, an iconic face of the 1970s and 80s. This biodoc has a slew of executive producers, including director Lana Wilson, who also directed the Taylor Swift doc Miss Americana for Netflix in 2020, actor and Brooke Shields' best friend, Allie Wentworth, as well as Allie Wentworth's husband, former Politico-turned-media person George Stephanopoulos. The documentary was released on April 3rd, 2023, and has been fairly well reviewed. It currently has an 88% fresh rating from critics on Rotten Tomatoes and 93% from the audience.
Not bad.
Yeah, not bad at all. Would one of you enjoy reading the synopsis?
You go ahead.
Okay. The 2-part docuseries follows actor, model, and icon Brooke Shields. Part 1 follows Brooke from a sexualized young girl to Princeton graduate, her extraordinary childhood, and her complex relationship with mother/manager Terry. Part 2 picks up after college as Brooke finds her voice, but as she tries to use it, a toxic culture will do anything to shut her up. That's from IMDb.
Thank you so much. All right, let's go back to the Andrea Agassi of it all.
That's where we go.
That's part 2.
Yeah,
I know. I'm sorry. What I liked about it is because part 1 sets up, how controlling her mother is. Part 2 shows us what so many of us know. Oh, and that her mother is an alcoholic, and Brooke has to deal with that growing up, and it's a lot. Like, this kid grows up
supporting her whole family too. I mean, that's,
supporting her whole family, but also like just like the work that you have to do as the child of an alcoholic and the breadwinner, and your mom is like an extremely volatile personality. And they're very close, but there's also this like power dynamic that's between them. That's, and these abusive elements that Brooke is enduring as well. And to go from that to then going into this marriage with Andrea Agassi, where he's as controlling and temperamental. And, the moment where they talk about how he is mad that she like licks Joey's hands while she's filming her Friends scene, and he had stormed out of her dressing room and went home, freaked out, broke all of his own trophies, which, I mean, at least he's, ruined his own stuff. But like, then she marries him after that. I mean, I know it comes before in the moment, but like at that point, they weren't actually married, as far as I know, because he refers to her as his girlfriend, and like, and she's, and she sort of owns up to like, yeah, like that was not a red flag for me because of what I had grown up with. So I think I really did like seeing that, and seeing that acknowledgement of like how this really erratic, controlling behavior had been normalized for her so much in her life that like, what I'm interested in is how she ended up leaving that marriage. Cause like, that's a part that they really gloss over.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like a lot of the biodoc series we've been talking about, like with Pam Anderson, etc., like the Taylor Swift one or the JLo one, like you kind of don't get to see these parts of this person's life, or like you see what they want you to see.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of sort of question marks throughout all of these things about, what their true feelings are about certain things that are known to the public about their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that this one in particular had a lot more to say that I didn't really ever consider about Brooke Shields' life, and in the bigger context of what it says about how we do treat women, how we do treat young girls. I mean, and I feel like there was something. I watched the Taylor Swift, I watched the Shania Twain, I watched the Pam Anderson, and I liked them, but this one seemed to have more to say for a larger cultural discussion for me.
Yeah, like I feel like they wanted it to have more to say. I think it had more to say than the ones that you're just mentioning, but I still think it didn't. Like, I still wanted it to go a bit further.
Well, the interesting thing about it to me is that it seems like Brooke herself is still processing her childhood and processing what happened to her, and she doesn't really have like a statement she wants to make about everything.
That's fair. Yeah.
I think she is the kind of person who like and I think we see this throughout, is that like she's still like this work in progress all the time, and I feel like that's like how she comes across, and I like the fact that she has, she agreed to make this documentary. She's done some biography stuff in the past. Like, she's willing to like put some pretty big pieces of herself out into the public eye, with her own agency now. Like, she didn't have a lot of choices growing up, and these are her choices now. But like, yeah, I want that extra little bit of an outsider, someone who's not so close to her, is not one of her best friends, is maybe like they get a little bit of that with some of like the cultural critics that are like part of it. But because like those aren't people who are like maybe doing that work with Brooke, the closest I think we kind of get is when she's having the discussion at the end of part 2 with her daughters.
Yeah.
And her daughters are like sort of really challenging her to think about these things. And she's asking questions. And I think she is genuinely curious because I think she has like a bit of an academic heart, you know, like she wants to explore things. She wants to like use her intellect in these ways that, you know, she got to at Princeton, but like maybe only touched on when she was so young when she went to school that like she's still sort of catching up with herself all the time. I don't know. It was, yeah, like I wanted more from it, but I think we'll get there down the road at some point.
You mean maybe? Part 3?
well, I mean, it seems
kind of. I anticipate that we're gonna get like another biography from Brooke Shields in like 10 years after she's really like maybe after her daughters are like 10 years older and have taken her through this like sort of like feminist like reconsideration of her childhood and her youth and her like cultural capital, because even though
it just like that scene with her daughters was super interesting to me.
Yeah, it really was.
It's like, you know, she's talking to them about like how she doesn't seem to think that the stuff that she did as a child actor was necessarily wrong. It was done in a time where those things were acceptable and now they aren't. And that seems to be like what she's saying to them. And her daughters are talking about, and they're talking about the difference between that and her daughters, you know, posting a picture of themselves bikinis on social media. And, you know, like they kind of talk about how like, it's, you know, I'm posting this on social media, so it's totally different. I'm making this decision. I'm doing it. But of course, like as someone watching, like we all know how toxic social media is to young girls.
And why are you posting it? What's your What's your rationale?
And it'll be interesting to see, like, if you, like you say, in 10 years, they make a documentary to see, like, you know, what did they think about those posters they pictured of their young selves on social media? And like, you know, like what impact has social media had on young women who do that? Like, it's not, I don't know. It just seems like this interesting kind of cycle of like, you know, motherhood and daughters, like that whole conversation, and just kind of like her girls kind of like exploring like the same ideas, but like feeling like they're more in control of it because they're posting it themselves. But it's like, are they? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think that's like an interesting question. And I mean, I do think it's the difference between being 11 and 16 is like sort of one of the things that they bring up, and consent, and like, you know, what Brooke didn't have consent. She didn't have like authority to give consent to like Pretty Baby particularly. And, you know, thinking about those kinds of questions, I don't think they can be exclusively conflated. I think that there are differences. But I think what came down to it is when they said, would you ever let us do Pretty Baby when we were 11? And she's like, no,
yeah.
I mean, that's where,
that's
where, you know, she's still doing some of the work, I think. And again, not someone obviously who knows Brooke Shields. And I don't want to like speak like I do, but she sounds like the kind of person who's still doing the work to like still have love for her mom and, you know, love for that relationship, and think about and not cast her mom as like someone who helped contribute to her exploitation. You know what I mean? And I think that would be so hard. That would be such a difficult, like,
well, that's the thing. It seems like, you know, the filmmakers are showing us one thing, and then, but like Brooke herself isn't sort of telling us that same story that the filmmakers are showing. Because like, if you like, we see scenes from Pretty Baby, and it just like turns your stomach. Like you can't even watch it. You know, like you're just like, that is crazy. It is crazy. And you're just like, it's just shocking, and you can't believe that it was allowed to happen. But then it's like countered with Brooke kind of being like, you know, like that's the way things were back then, kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I really do think I think she wants to acknowledge that this contributed to like her very screwed up relationship to like her own sexuality, her own body. And I think she does acknowledge it. I think it's more like I just think, yeah, like this documentary could be made 2 years from now and she'd be in a better place to maybe like really assess the situation. But it might not be the kind of thing that like you can really address fully until you've sat through this part of it, you know, like as a person. It's a weird thing when like someone holds up a mirror to you and says this thing you've been told all your life is like a bit controversial, is actually damaged you. You know what I mean? Like, because I mean, people were outraged when she made the film.
Yeah.
And she had to go and like defend herself as an 11-year-old saying, I don't have aspirations to be a prostitute. Like, I mean, my God.
Yeah.
And you see, like, I don't know, it was really heartbreaking to me to watch these old interviews with her between the ages of like 11 and 16. And you see this sort of like professional vacancy come into her eyes as she, and this smile come onto her face that she has practiced these answers. And she never lets her guard down. Not once.
No, she doesn't. I mean, I probably at the time they were calling her poised, and now you just think it's almost like shock that she had to go through that. You know, it is unbelievable. And then, as we were saying in part 2, starts off with the unfortunate decision to put your name behind an unauthorized biography that had a section. It was to be about her journey through university, and everyone jumped on the part where she said she was a virgin at 20, and that became, I mean, it's almost as if we hadn't had enough horror in episode 1. Let's start right off with the horror of this poor woman, this young woman having to defend her virginity on countless talk shows, to have to hear like Merv Griffin and asking about your virginity. That was okay? I can't even.
I know.
There were so, like, honestly, like, that was horrible. But then also to think about, like, what Dean Cain has become, and that's the guy that, like, you lost your virginity to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that gotta hurt.
Terrible.
Too. Yeah.
Terrible. Sorry, I'm just joking. But yeah. He sounded like he was, like, nice to her, though, at the time. So that's good.
Yes. Yeah, I think that was quite lovely. I mean, except for the odd, of course, anytime Michael Jackson's going to come up, it's going to be odd for sure. And
wow, I know.
I forgot all of that.
Yeah.
I too.
I forgot all of that.
Yeah.
Ooh.
It is a wild journey. I am, and you know, in like all documentaries, we watch the old footage. There's an awful lot of it. And then we do obviously get Brooke Shields now looking back. And it is remarkable how well adjusted she actually is as a human when you're watching all of the things she has gone through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially, you know, dealing with her mom and her, you know, all of her problems and being like, you know, the breadwinner for her family and having that pressure.
And knowing that, I mean, she was saying that she would know the difference between them getting a car or buying a better house would be her making a movie or her doing a TV commercial. So there wasn't any room to say no to anything. Well,
yeah. And it makes you kind of think about child actors in general. Like you know, like, should child acting exist? I don't know.
I appreciated seeing Drew Barrymore in there and her perspective as well. Like, it, you know, because she obviously went through the ringer, and she's a bit younger than Brooke Shields, but like still in all, like, you know, but yeah, it's nice to see some success stories. Even it's not success stories, survival stories, you know.
But I mean, like, A-dubs, you read that Jenny McCurdy book?
Yeah.
I'm Glad My Mom Died.
Jeanette McCurdy, yeah.
Yeah, Jeanette McCurdy. Is that kind of like a similar story, or is it?
It's even like on some level, it's even worse. Like the relationship. Like, honestly, I would love to know what Brooke Shields thinks of Jeanette McCurdy's book. That's the conversation I want to have. Like, actually, I think it would be kind of fun to be friends with Brooke Shields, too. I think it would be a wild experience to be friends with Jeanette McCurdy. But yeah, I would love to for them to have a conversation, because there's like a good 20-year age difference between those two women. And Jeanette McCurdy really is very clear. Like, she finally, in writing this book, she comes to, the very clear realization that her mom abused her in countless ways. It doesn't mean that she didn't love her mom or that she doesn't think her mom didn't love her. It was complicated and ugly and bad, like really bad. And Jeanette McCurdy is so clear about like how that ended up, and just the codependency. Like, she thought she would die when her mother died, in the same way that Brooke Shields says she thought she would die when her mother died. Like, and I guess like that the point there is like that, yeah, the the version of you that your moms have created will die, but that doesn't mean you'll die. You know what I mean? Like, it's a different kind of phrasing, I think. And yeah, it seems like it can be extremely ugly, especially like if there's just like some volatile personality disorder stuff happening, as well as like addiction stuff happening,
Yeah, and also like there's this assumption that if someone's parents are present and looking out for them, that nothing bad is going to happen to them on set. But it's like, like if you're in a situation where your parent who's making these decisions, like their livelihood rests on you getting these jobs as well, like, how much does that factor into their decision making, unfortunately? And, I don't know. That's another thing.
I mean, I do like, I think there is a universe in which we can look back at, and again, this would have to be Brooke Shields doing this, but Terry being on set with her, maybe the extent of her exploitation would have been 1,000 times worse if Terry hadn't been on set with her. You know what I mean? Like, it could have gone even uglier. It could have been.
Oh yeah, like I think parents should be on set with their kids.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm just saying.
But like, I'm just saying, like Terry did okay a lot of things that are obviously like, not cool. But it maybe could have been even worse, and that's even a weirder thing to think. I just the idea that like this famous director is off camera hurting the lead actress so that she can like give the pained ecstasy face that he wants to see.
Oh, yes.
Because she like
doesn't know
16,
what that is. Yeah, and doesn't know
what that is. Like, oh my God. I was just like, there's so many moments. She described it as, Brooke Shields describes it as, quote, "You instantly become a vapor of yourself." And that just like, that line killed me. I was like, oh my God. Like, I think she has done so much work on herself. And I just, you can see that in a lot of places in this documentary. I think the fact that we're even getting to see the documentary is like testament to that. There's just like these other, what we're looking for as viewers is that like broader cultural context and understanding. And we also want to, push into areas that not necessarily are things that we're wanting to be extractive about, but like, we just really want to think about like what we're told is documentaries provide us with a sort of better world understanding. What these shows do is, and I think these kinds of documentaries are important because these women are getting to tell their stories themselves in the way that they feel comfortable with. So I think that there's a lot of value to them. Maybe we just have to sort of lower our expectations of what they're going to contribute culturally.
Yeah.
It's one of those questions I've always wondered too about the parents who signed off on Linda Blair being in The Exorcist. I just always think about that. I just think when you read that script, when you knew what was going to be going on with your child, and you're like, "Yep, well, where do I sign?" Like that to me is it is. I mean, she's not around. I mean, she was asked. We did see in the documentary many times where her, Terry is asked, why did you allow your daughter to be in something like this? And it was never a satisfying explanation. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, like what explanation could there be?
That's the thing. Like, could there be a satisfying one? No, probably not.
No. It couldn't have been tremendous amount of money, could it? I mean, or was it she thinking that she was going to be Oscar material or something? I don't know.
Well, I just think it's this, which is like why it's like it should start a conversation about child acting, because it's just like this scene. It probably is like a step on the way to her becoming a huge star.
Well, she's 11 and it's her first lead role. And getting a lead role in a movie, I think I'm pretty sure there are some people who'd sell their children for that. So in a way, this is what happened. And she did. And
I was curious, we didn't see Susan Sarandon in this. Were you thinking about that as well? I mean, she starred with her.
Yeah, I was not, because I just don't trust anything Susan Sarandon has to say anymore.
Okay, fair.
I was curious about like, I know Louis Malle's dead, but I was a little more curious, like thinking about, again, I don't want to make like the women who are married to men who make decisions have to answer for these men. Like, I just don't think that's like great, but I'm so curious about like, just like, I am curious, and maybe this is wrong of me, but like, Candice Bergen was married to that man for a long time. She married him after this movie, I believe.
They had a daughter too.
Yeah. No, and I know that he's like an artist and like whatever. And Ebert thought this movie was great, and also commented on the beauty and charm and incredible performance of Shields. And I guess it's just like, if like you just look at Brooke Shields as a commodity, if you just see pretty women as commodities, as muses, as vehicles for the male gaze, I guess all these guys are just don't care. Like, thinking about like Jodie Foster in
Taxi Driver,
Driver, and like,
yeah, that's a complicated relationship as well, right? With Jodie Foster and her mother, who is also her manager too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like your mom's there, your mom loves you, and yet, here they are.
The
but at the same time, like, I mean, and I think that the relationship between Terry and Brooke is bigger than this moment and bigger than all the other moments as well. And she's dead, so she can't like really answer for herself. And I don't think she could answer for herself then, because I don't think she wanted her kid to be famous, and she wanted to have a place to live and food to eat. And she had wanted to be famous herself, and that didn't really go anywhere. And, she was a single mom, and, there's a lot of stuff there, I think, that's like kind of fascinating. And most of the really terrible things, like externally, that have happened to Brooke outside of like this family dynamic, is like there were a lot of bad men around Brooke Shields who thought they could take what they wanted. Like, honestly, the relationship she has with her security guard is one of the purest, most beautiful things I've seen in a long time. And I that's so weird.
Yeah.
And it looks like she's developed a lot more friendships as she's got older. And definitely didn't get an opportunity as a young girl to develop friendships.
Yeah, it was nice to see that her and Laura Linney used to be friends as kids, and that they're still friends now. Like, oh my God. It's like, she seemed like she witnessed a lot. But again, a lot of the people in this documentary are kind of conditioned to talk in sort of like more euphemisms and be like less direct and less concrete. And they also, I mean, one of the pieces that I was linking to is talking about like everyone having sort of like a just like pull up your bootstraps and keep going. We're gonna survive. We're gonna thrive. Hope is moving through it and getting past it. And that's kind of an old school way of thinking about dealing with trauma. Like that's it's a classic old school way of,
Yeah.
I mean, if there was like the generation before them was like nothing is trauma. And then there's like the generation of Brooke Shields, which is like, we've got trauma, but we're going to like work through it. And I don't want to be a victim. And then you've got like, I don't know, whatever the next generation is like, okay, can we actually just like make space for like feeling some trauma and
also,
like dealing with it?
When you're watching the documentary, there's part of you that's like, can we just give this woman a break? All of a sudden she wants to have children, can't have children, uses IVF, finally has children, has postpartum depression, decides to talk about postpartum depression. Tom Cruise comes out.
Oh,
I mean, it felt like no matter what this woman was doing, she couldn't catch a break.
And it's like, why did
Why was Tom Cruise involved
talk
in that?
about, why was he involved
honestly,
in
guys,
this at
the
all?
overall question is always why Tom Cruise?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And just men commenting on her body again.
Oh, I know.
Again
I
and
know.
again and again.
Tom Cruise, like, just like I mean, this was 2006 that he was doing this. And I feel wholeheartedly like this is absolutely a 2023 attitude for a lot of things. I am sure he's got lots of ideas about lots of things right now, currently in this world. And just like, I've read the things, but I'm smarter than everyone. I'm smarter. And I have the power of Xenu behind me, basically. Like, my God.
But it was hard to hear Matt Lauer defending Brooke Shields too. So the whole thing.
That's the other. I mean, like, just it
was a real flashback.
A wash of not great men in Brooke Shields' life. I gotta say, like, yikes. And I don't want to gloss over the part where she describes for the first time like her experience with sexual assault, and it's a story that is very harrowing and obviously clearly like still really hard for her, and obviously it's really hard for her. And she talks previously about dissociating during like filming scenes that she was uncomfortable with, that like when she was being sexualized as a teen, and sort of that similar experience. She froze, she needed to survive, and she needed to get out, and just she doesn't name her assailant, which, obviously fine. I think that they deal with that really actually kind of beautifully in the doc. Like she tells her story. They talk to the security guard, who had been like who's been her lifelong security person and like a brother or whatever. And then they show Brooke in conversation with Allie about it, and Allie expressing feelings. And I thought that was handled really nicely.
Yeah.
Like that.
Her being so
really
honest about the feelings that she had at the time, which of course her friend's going to jump on her when she said, well, I thought it made me cool, which just goes to show where her head was at that time, which is just
totally
so tragic. So tragic.
Absolutely. So I mean, I do think like the documentary has some things that I would like to see it do a little bit differently, or like go in a few more directions that are a little bit deeper. But like, it has these moments that really are truly great. And Brooke Shields is like, you feel like she seems like a pretty great person. I know that's the point of the documentary. I understand these biodocs are meant to show us the best versions of people to a certain extent, but she does seem pretty great. And like the choices that she has made in her life and how she has kind of gotten through things. Like, I love the fact that she's, she went to school and she found that she liked musical theater and comedy, and then discovered she had this like natural sort of like ability to do comedy. Honestly, I thought her arc on Friends was one of my favorite guest star arcs on Friends ever. Like, she was
being on Broadway as Rizzo. I mean,
genius.
Who saw that coming? I mean, that
can you imagine
this doc, you would not.
Can you imagine just like being at Yale and just having Brooke Shields join your acting troupe? Like, no big deal.
Well, she wouldn't have been there at the same time as Rory Gilmore, would she?
Well, okay, guys, she went to Princeton.
Oh, yeah,
Let's
you're
be
right.
clear
Princeton,
first.
right.
Rory went to Yale. Brooke went to Princeton.
Right.
But yeah, no, I can see it being, when she talks about like her first experience, like the first year of people just being like, no one wanting to come near her or whatever. And I was like, that does sound lonely.
Yeah.
Especially, especially for someone like Brooke Shields, who has had such a chaotic, weird life. And up to this point, I'm glad she found her people at Princeton,
Mhm.
you know,
Eventually,
like,
yeah.
like I do think the idea that she talked to her mom 5 times a day when she
Mhm.
was away at school, like, I cannot imagine that. And it's not Terry calling Brooke, it was Brooke calling Terry.
Yeah.
And I actually am really, this sounds weird since, again, I don't know Terry or Brooke, but I was so happy that Terry didn't let her drop out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I
Like,
agree. Yeah, because she must
That was
really,
like the best
'cause
parent
they had a
move
real
she'd-
codependent thing going on, so she probably really wanted her home.
Yeah, but that
Working.
was like the best parenting that we saw from Terry, I think, the
Mhm.
whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
But so I was looking her filmography, and she's been in so many things like consistently over her career. But for me personally, I don't think I've ever actually seen any of her films. And I've experienced her more as like a model in a Calvin Klein ads or
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
this like a celebrity. Like, but I haven't actually seen any of her films or her TV
I've never
stuff
seen
have-
Pretty Baby or Blue Lagoon. I may have seen Endless Love at some point, just because it was because of Lionel Richie, though.
But did
Which
either
is
of you
nice to
even-
also know that they're friends. And I wonder,
Isn't
is
that
it the
so
Endless
cute?
Love connection?
Isn't
Is that
that
what
so
it is?
cute?
I don't know.
But did either
Yeah.
of you ever watch Suddenly Susan?
I did watch it a bit, but I didn't watch it a lot because when we were seeing in the documentary, they're showing a lot of the clips, and I couldn't recall a single one.
Yeah, it didn't
But
look
I know that
familiar
I
to me.
watched it a little bit because it was part of like the Thursday night lineup, right? So like, and I did watch the Thursday night lineup a little bit, but maybe I was getting, it was more mid 90s at that point. So maybe I was, or like mid to late 90s. So maybe I wasn't home as much as I would have been when I was younger. Like, but I do remember her on Friends in that role. Cause before that, I'd never seen any of her movies. And I had only seen ads of her, and she had kind of fallen out of favor because she's 13 years older than me. So she had kind of fallen out of favor like a little bit by the time I would have really been paying attention to like teen magazines and stuff. But she used to show up on Circus of the Stars, where the different stars would always like learn a circus act.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I used to see her in that a lot. And I was just like repeatedly told, like, this is a beautiful girl. You know what I mean?
Mhm,
Like that was, and I was like, okay, well, I mean, at least she looks a little different. She's got eyebrows. That's cool. She's got like kind of an interesting shaped face. Like, okay, I will,
She really,
let's
let's be honest though, she really was a beautiful baby. I mean, that's outrageously beautiful baby.
Yeah, like she's beautiful. There's no doubt about that. But I was just always like a little bit grateful that she was like I guess because she was like so tall, and she seemed more athletic. Like,
how was she
like-
as a circus performer then?
She was always great.
Okay, interesting.
Always great. I don't know if she did it every year. In my head, she did, but I don't know if I'm just imagining that. But you could see, this sounds so silly, but I was like, of course that's her work ethic. You know how committed she was at Circus of the Stars? Like, this was, like, you could see her drive, and I was like, she took this seriously. Good for her. Way to go, girl.
Go,
Yeah,
Brooke,
it was
go,
always-
Brooke, go, Brooke. Go, Brooke.
I liked that, but but yeah, like I feel like this film has done a little bit more than some of the other.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, it tried a little bit more.
watched.
Especially with all the cultural critics, I thought that was really smart to mix that in with Friends and different things.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
What do we all think about it? Does it pop?
It pops.
It popped for me.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
popped for me
I would say
too.
it pops.
Yeah, I definitely, especially if you like this genre of the biodoc, I think this was a particularly good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I still think you could definitely trim
Yeah.
and
Well,
make it into one.
But big pops from me. I think it's quite good, especially part 2.
Yeah, Netflix just needs to add a little thing on for like Lisa at the end of part 1. It's like, stay tuned for part 2.
Don't give up on us now, Lisa. There's more.
Oh my god, I love it. But if you're looking for it, it's on Disney Plus, not Netflix. Just FYI.
Right.
Just in case any listeners. Although if you're listening in the States, Hulu.
Yeah.
Find it on Hulu. So we love to leave our episodes on other things we also recommend. Elisa, would you like to go first?
Sure. I have watched the first 2 episodes of Mrs. Davis. Has anyone had a chance to see that?
I have not yet. How is it?
Oh, it is fantastic. It is really,
I've heard good
really
things.
smart. Yeah. It's very hard to describe. I'm going to say it's a surreal action comedy drama that feels a little bit like watching The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It is one of the most bizarre shows I've ever seen, but has a lot of heart and is really funny and really sweet. So I don't think I've seen anything quite like it before. So I'm highly recommending it. We might even want to do it. It's a pretty amazing.
Where can you watch it?
You can watch it on Crave.
Awesome.
And it's starring Betty Gilpin, if you remember her from Glow, which
I love
we
her.
did. Yeah, no, she's amazing. It's like something I've never seen before. It is completely unique. You won't even get it at the beginning. You'll just be stunned watching because you can't figure out where it's going.
Huh. Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You made
That's
it sound very appealing.
Oh, I think you'll love it.
He's done a great job.
Okay, good.
Great job.
I win.
AG, what about you?
Well, I probably recommend this every year, but the Doxa Documentary Film Festival is starting in Vancouver on Thursday, May 4th. The opening night film is called Big Fight in Little Chinatown, and it is about the struggle of Chinatowns around North America, their struggle for survival in the wake of, a lot of like gentrification and all kinds of challenges. But yeah, as usual, there is an amazing program of documentaries to check out, and everything's online, and it runs for 10 days. So I highly encourage people to check it out.
Awesome. Doxa is always a great time. I love it so much. So I second that. But my recommendation is I have returned to the season 2 of Schmigadoon.
Oh, okay.
This one it's still called Schmigadoon, but it's Schmigadoon Schmicago. And
that's what they're really calling it?
So it's still called Schmigadoon, but when you bring up the show, it shows you Schmigadoon, but then it gets rid of it and it says Schmicago. So we're
not doing Brigadoon anymore. Now we're doing Chicago. Is that the idea?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So the premise of season 1 was that these 2 New York doctors, they go on a backpacking trip to sort of make their failing relationship come back together. Instead, they get lost and they discover a magical town called Schmigadoon, which is trapped in a golden age style musical that they can't leave the town until they find true love. And this is like a parody of the 1947 musical Brigadoon. I liked season 1, but I didn't love it. But that's because the golden age musicals are not my cup of tea as much. However, do I love Chicago? Mm-hmm. Sure as hell do. So season 2, I am enjoying quite a bit. And I gotta say, like, Jane Krakowski is one of the extended cast members. Dove Cameron, who you might know from TikTok, is great. Kristen Chenoweth is around. Alan Cumming, Ariana DeBose. And it also stars Keegan-Michael Key and Cecily Strong. And honestly, what a great time. I'm up to episode 4. And it's also filmed in Vancouver. So there's some local actors.
I didn't know that.
As part of the cast.
I had no idea. Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll like it even more. All right.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah,
we had it coming.
And that's on Apple Plus.
Excellent.
We I can't.
Sorry.
They somehow go even darker because Sweeney Todd is also referenced in it, and Sweeney Todd is my all-time favorite musical, and they somehow make their version of the Sweeney Todd song between Sweeney Todd and Mrs. Lovett, like their versions of those two, like it's even darker, but somehow that somehow makes it funnier. Anyway, all right. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. You can hang out with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You could email us at popthiscollective@gmail.com. You could rate and review us 5 stars.
5 stars. And thank you, as always, to Andrea Gin, who is our co-host and our producer here. And as I like to say, our 5-star general, which sounds like she's very bossy, but she's not. She's just excellent. And
thanks for that clarification.
You're welcome. And thank you all for listening. I appreciate it very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.